Hello and welcome to a new series of exam revision notes. In this series we're going to look at some of the topics that the examining bodies say that students are struggling with. And the first one I've picked is long multiplication because that's the one that the Edexcel board said that most of the students struggle with. We'll also be covering other topics like long division and percentages and fractions and so on. So in this video we're going to look at a fairly ominous looking multiplication like 725 times 156. Okay then, so what does 725 times 156 mean? Well, 725 is 7 times 100 plus 2 times 10 plus 5 times 1, which is the same as 7 in the hundreds column, 2 in the tens column, 5 in the units column. And by the same reasoning, 156 is 1 times 100 plus 5 times 10 plus 6 times 1. So 725 times 156 is the same as saying 7 times 100 plus 2 times 10 plus 5 times 1, all of which is multiplied by all of 1 times 100 plus 5 times 10 plus 6 times 1. This is why we line up our long multiplication the way we do, so that we can keep track of our hundreds, tens and units. So we can actually think of 725 times 156 as 3 separate multiplications all added together. Basically what we've got is 725 times 6 plus 725 times 50 plus 725 times 100. Okay then, so let's get cracking on our multiplication. So the first thing we do is multiply the 725 by the units column. Okay, so the first thing we do is multiply the units by the units. So 6 times 5 is 30. But 30 of course is 3 in the tens column and 0 in the units column. So we write down the 0 and carry the 3 into the tens column. Now we multiply the units by the tens. In this case, 6 times 2 is 12. But we carried a 3 over from the units column into the tens column. So the tens column is occupied by a 3 and a 2 at the same time. And since they can't both occupy the same column, we add them together. So 3 plus 2 is 5. So we write down the 5 and carry the 1. And now we multiply the units by the hundreds. In this case, 6 times 7 is 42. We must remember though to add the 1 that we carried over from the units column. So 42 plus 1 is 43. So we write down the 3 and carry the 4. Since there are no remaining columns to multiply, the 4, which was carried into the thousands column, can just be written in. Now we multiply using the tens column. Since we're now working with the tens column, every number is 10 times bigger, so we write a 0 in the units column to remind us. So now we multiply the tens by the units. Since 5 times 5 is 25, we write down the 5 and carry the 2. Now we multiply the tens by the tens. 5 times 2 is 10, but we carried a 2 over from the previous column, and 10 plus 2 is 12. So we write down the 2 and carry the 1. And lastly we multiply the tens by the hundreds. So 5 times 7 is 35, but we carried a 1 over from the previous column, and 35 plus 1 is 36. So we write down the 6 and carry the 3. Since there are no remaining columns to multiply, the 3, which was carried into the thousands column, can just be written in. And now it's time to move on to the hundreds. Once again, we must remember we're no longer multiplying by 1, but by 100. So we write down 2 zeros to keep track of our place value. So now we come to multiply the hundreds by the units. Since 1 times 5 is 5, there is nothing to carry. So we just write down the 5. And now we multiply the hundreds by the tens. So 1 times 2 is 2. So there's nothing to carry, so we just write down the 2. And now we multiply the hundreds by the hundreds. 1 times 7 is 7, there's nothing to carry, so we write down the 7. Finally, we just add the 3 results. Starting from the right and working left, 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0, so we write down the 0. 5 plus 5 plus 0 is 10, so we write down the 0 and carry the 1. 3 plus 2 plus 5 is 10, but there is a 1 carried over from the previous column, and 10 plus 1 is 11, so we write down the 0 and carry the 1. 4 plus 6 plus 2 is 12, but there is a 1 carried over from the previous column, and 12 plus 1 is 13, so we write down the 3 and carry the 1. 7 plus 3 is 10, but there is a 1 carried over from the previous column, and 10 plus 1 is 11, so we write down the 1 and carry the 1. Since there are no more columns to add, the 1 that was carried over into the hundred thousands column is just written in. So just to check that we've actually done exactly the same thing, if we look back at our opening slide, we've got 725 times 6 is 4,350. And here we've done the exact same thing. 725 times 6 is 4,350. And again, we've done 725 times 50 is 36,250. And when we laid it out as long multiplication, we've done 725. Instead of being times 5, it's times 50, which is why we put the 0 in the units column. So again, we've got 725 times 50 is 36,250. And the last one was 725 times 100 is 72,500. Again, this is not 725 times 1. Because we put the 2 zeros in the units column, it's 725 times 100, which is 72,500. And the final stage is to add up all the values. 725 times 156 is 72,500 plus 36,250 plus 4,350 is 113,100. Okay, I hope that theory was useful, and what I want to do now is just put that into practice and have a crack at a quick question. So let's just pick some numbers at random. Let's do 123 times, say, 36, just to show you don't have to use 3-digit numbers. You can multiply any number of digits by any number of digits. So all we're doing 6 times 3 is 18, so we write down the 8 and carry the 1. 6 times 2 is 12, add the 1 is 13, so we write down the 3, carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and then we put a 0 in the units column. 3 times 3 is 9, there's nothing to carry. 3 times 2 is 6, there's nothing to carry. 3 times 1 is 3, and we just add them together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 3 plus 9 is 12. 7 plus 6 plus 1 is 14. And 3 plus 1 is 4. And there's our answer. Okay, I hope that was useful. Why don't you pick some numbers at random and multiply them together and check your answers on a calculator. Good luck with your exams, and I'll see you in a future video.